Hi guys, welcome back to the Improvement Season podcast. It is me, Steve Hall, and on the other end, still Papa P with the moustache, slowly creeping and growing.
Yeah, I will probably keep it like this, to be honest.
Okay.
I had a look at some of the videos and also the pictures. If I wax it, it looks all right, and it looks also a little bit more unique. But if I don't wax it, man, it looks just like, I don't know, awful. Do you know this TV show where, I don't know, what was it again? A family motorcycling business. I think they customized motorcycles, and there's a meme where they are just shouting at each other, and that one guy has this very, very prominent beard that's just like going down here, and I don't want to look like, I don't know, a goat or so. I want to be a goat, but I don't want to look like one.
Yeah. Greatest of all time, but not literally. It's funny, I don't, obviously social media is listening to us or something, but Facebook shows me sometimes, as you know, Pascal, and maybe some of the listeners, I'm putting more content over on Facebook now and then, so I'm on the platform more, and I see these just kind of random adverts pop up and these, I don't know, news articles. It's like, I don't know, pop culture and shit. But someone anyway had some influencer who had like showing his moustache routine, and the video just starts playing. And the start of it is like he's got it all combed down, and it just looks, it looks so bad when it's like all combed down here, and then he has to like start doing all of this and making it look all right. But I think that was enough to put me off thinking about, I don't think I could even grow it that long, to be honest.
And this way, it doesn't really annoy me when I'm eating. It still gives me that mustache look, but without kind of the edges where it's just like, I don't know. It can look very, very, I think dirty is the wrong word. Kind of like, I don't know.
Untidy? I don't know.
Yeah, to some extent, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, the moral is,
I know what you mean.
I would probably leave it like this now.
I get tempted very often to grow out my beard, and I just look back at other photos and I'm like, it just, even if I try and keep it tidy, it just doesn't suit me as much as like just keeping it a bit shorter. Yeah. But for some reason, it's always tempting just to, I think it's me being a bit lazy, just like letting it, like I'm just like, oh yeah, just let it grow, see what happens. I'm kind of attempting that with my hair at the moment.
There's a perfect word for it in German that is called fusselig. What do you think about that word, Steve? Fusselig. Do you like it? The sound of it?
Is it
fusselig?
Fusselig. I quite like fusselig. I can say it and it almost sound a bit German. So what's the direct translation?
Well, I don't even know. Otherwise, I could have actually then just like said it. But so the way that I can describe it is when a blanket is not really soft anymore, and there's just like a lot of cloth, maybe kind of small balls hanging off of it, or like jumpers, for example, have it sometimes as well. Like kind of untidy, but fusselig is the right appropriate term for it.
So with that kind of intro out the way, how are you doing? How are you feeling? How was... Good. If this is the first time we've talked since, well, it's the first episode of the new year, so welcome to, is it? No, it's not. Yeah. It's the first time we're recording in the new year, right? I always get this confused.
Yeah, in between the year, in between the holidays, so Christmas and New Year's Eve, we recorded the last episode. Nothing has really changed, but it feels like a long time ever since we've spoken the last time. The only thing that happened was, of course, New Year's Eve. It was the first year where people were allowed again to go out, crack some fireworks here in Germany. This is always a big deal for the vast majority of people. And I never really understood it because it doesn't even look good. It causes a lot of noise and pollution. And you're basically kind of burning your money. Like that's basically what you're doing. So I never really got it. It looks much, much better if it's kind of a centrally organized, spectacular kind of fireworks at some kind of, I don't know. I was once in London for New Year's Eve, like ages ago, and at the London Eye, I saw kind of fireworks, and that looked amazing, you know. Then you watch it and go back home. But doing it on your own, it's just like, and this was the first time that people were allowed to do it again. And I'm just now a grumpy old man. I'm just like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? just causing air pollution, noise, in the middle of the night, right? Just like the entire time, basically complaining because I fucking hate it, to be honest. Sorry for the people listening who find it very much amazing. We can agree that fireworks that are organized are very nice to look at, but not when there's just like, I don't know, a bunch of 16-year-olds in front of your house, just like listening to shitty music that people are listening to nowadays at that age, and then just like cracking fireworks the entire time that are so loud that you're just thinking that something exploded, like not just like a firecracker, but like a car or something like this. So yeah, that's me ending the rant here, but that was basically what happened over the last days.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been to the central like London fireworks. They are pretty spectacular, but it's like you could make a whole podcast like talking about something that's completely unrelated to anything that we're meant to be talking about. But even the money that the government spend on this shit, and I'm just like, man, it's just not like there's so many better things they could be investing that money in.
The thing is,
one thing I was just going to mention about one thing in addition to the points you made. We're very lucky with Ada. She doesn't get freaked out by fireworks, but dogs and probably cats, other wildlife, I imagine they lose their shit. Yes. And I wonder how many die. That's exactly it.
I think everyone who's into fireworks, right, is maybe like, yeah, that's cool. I don't really get why you're complaining about this. But once you have kids, and also once you have especially like dogs, and dog owners will be able to relate to that so much, you just start to hate this fucking shit. And in Germany, in Berlin, it's just ridiculous because what the government had to do for the police is to announce the security measures. What is it again? When something is kind of at high alert, just for that day alone, because they were expecting so many people burning their hands, kind of needing to go into the hospital. And also, they needed to do this because there's always kind of a war going on, at least in the bigger cities. And this time, there's a huge controversy now in Germany because they attacked police cars and also attacked fire cars or fire extinguishers as well. Like they called them up. And then they were just like hiding, like 15, 20 people were hiding somewhere in the bushes. And then they were kind of trying to take over that fire car. It's crazy, isn't it? And if you're allowing something like this just for the sake of having a good time, it's just ridiculous in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't really get it either. Normally, though, this is the first time I actually managed to get to bed before midnight. I can't remember the last time since being a grown adult that I did that. It's mostly, well, you could say it's all been my choice, but the last few years I've been more on like the side of I just want to fucking go to bed, being the grumpy old man. But typically I'm with Charlotte, and she likes celebrating this sort of thing, and she's a night owl, so she's up hours after this anyway. So these sort of events are like well within her kind of scope. But I was in bed, but probably similar to you, being central London, woken up by all of it, and so like it lit up the sky quite literally. Like you talked about pollution, like the light pollution. It's kind of like madness. They just looked like it was like the middle of the day almost.
Yeah. And once again, so many people are listening to this and be like, okay, first and foremost, this is not relevant to a fitness podcast. I totally get that.
Sleep, somehow, we've talked about it.
Yeah, secondarily, just complaining, never having anything too positive to say about this. And yes, this is one of those things where I'm just adamant about that it has no positive impact on me personally or most people. Same goes for smoking, to be honest. Smoking, I simply don't get, because you are just doing harm to yourself, harm to your environment. You are smelling very badly as well. The walls are getting yellow, and you're wasting basically money on nothing. You're basically damaging yourself and paying money for this. So I don't really get it. And it's the same when it comes to those kind of fireworks that you can purchase. I simply don't get it. And that's why I'm complaining, because it doesn't really make any kind of sense in my head to still allow this. I was hoping that after COVID, that it was prohibited, that they are seeing the positive impact of it, and just keep it prohibited. and just have a central place or several of central fireworks. But this time it's just like, man, hopefully what happened to the police and also the ambulance and all that kind of stuff is enough for them to say like, all right, here, and this is enough now. Where does freedom start and where does it end? You know, freedom in our context always stops there when you're starting to harm other people with your or expression of freedom. And that was kind of very much over the edge as well. Like putting other people at risk, firing kind of rockets into the apartment of other people. Stuff like that happened, you know, and that it wasn't the first time that it happened.
They're essentially weaponizing people in some sense. Like, it's kind of crazy. But yeah, with that out of the way, I'm sure some people can relate, especially on like not really understanding the hype behind it. It's kind of like the hype behind New Year's resolutions and all of that. Like, I get it to some extent because it's like it's a new page in a book almost, it feels like. And I think it's a good opportunity for some people to reflect upon time because it forces you almost to do it. It doesn't mean you have to do it at that time. You don't have to wait until New Year's to start. You can start and kind of do these things anytime, and you can reflect at any time. You probably should be more often. But anyway, in terms of
But I think, Steve, on that note, though, I just recently made a post about it over on Instagram because I think that too many people poo on New Year's resolution. And I think there's never a bad time to start changing something for the positive about whatever is going on in your life. And if you need that trigger of the new year, that's a positive thing, in my opinion. And instead of poo-pooing on it, why aren't you doing it for at any time of the year? I see the point, and I'm totally in agreement that you can do this at any time out of the year. But if that is the trigger that is then causing some positive changes, I'm all for it, you know? And instead of then giving people a hard time about why they first start doing it now, instead of kind of 2 months earlier, hey, just celebrate that they are starting changing something. And if they stick with it, even better.
Yeah, I think the problem is, I guess it's not even just New Year's resolutions on their own. It's just anyone who's starting a goal, it might be a health or fitness goal, that they go all in and like it's an extreme lifestyle change for them. And then it becomes completely unsustainable. And they also have no kind of process behind how they're going to achieve it. They're just like, I don't know, I'm going to lose 20 pounds. And they're just like, eat fucking dust. And it's just like, oh God, go to the gym every day. And they burn out after a week. They're like, how the fuck does anyone do this health and fitness thing? It's way too hard. It's like, well, you just didn't have the right process in mind.
I think that most of our audience, of course, doesn't really fall into that spectrum that
I'd hope so.
That they need New Year's resolutions in order to change something. And even if they do, that's totally all right. At the same time, though, I see a lot of similarities, though, to the struggles that people are having because of, it's like you said, a lack of plan, a lack of structure, a lack of kind of goals that they want to accomplish. Because if you just start doing something, yes, it can work out if you really enjoy it. Right, then you don't really need to have a specific goal. But if it's something that you see more kind of as I don't know, more as a burden, you need to have some willpower to force yourself out of doing it regularly and pushing yourself regularly. Then, of course, I think that having a goal is kind of necessary, at least in the immediate short term. After a while, it may become a habit of yours. You may start to identify with that person of going to the gym, just being part of you. But at first, maybe you need kind of some kind of targets for yourself. And if you don't, then it's kind of very much similar to some people starting a New Year's resolution and having no kind of clear structure of how to actually get there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's where, like so often, what we can do for people who are listening as a coach is that they have a lot of the knowledge. It's just that application, like how do you put it all together in a long-term kind of view? Like where am I today? Where am I going to be in a week, in a month, in a year? It's like, well, like we can map that out for you and then you just You just have to focus on the process, and that's ultimately what matters the most. Is there anything you've got in mind for this year? Is there anything you've thought about that you want to do? I've just got one very small one that came to mind for me.
No, unfortunately not. There are just so many things that I need to pay for this year.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's the only thing that is on my mind. So many kind of small kind of steps. So, of course, there will be the wedding. So I want to make it to the wedding, want to look decent for this, of course. But other than that, we want to kind of have a new kitchen because ours is the one that was in here when we purchased the house. And this one is already kind of coming up to 30 years of age. And it's not the best anymore. It's kind of disgusting, especially on the upper shelves. When you touch it, you can feel like kind of the fatty grease that has settled on top of it and all the kind of stuff.
You can't clean that easy.
No. Yeah. And we just need to get a new one there. Also, our car is just absolute dog shit, to be honest. There's mold inside of the car, simply because the isolation is so freaking bad. This is just our fault, because 3 years ago we thought like, hey, yeah, let's buy a new car that is not the most expensive one because we just need a transportation. Then we went with Dacia, which is kind of like a Romanian brand, which is also under the hood of Renault, I think. And it's just such a shitty car, And we need a new one because in the wintertime, we need to turn up the heat like completely just to be able to drive, because otherwise the humidity in the car itself is, we can't really look outside the windows.
I know exactly.
It's awful. It's an awful car. So of course we need to then also pay money for this, pay money for the wedding, pay money for the kitchen, and it's a lot of investments. That's never a nice thing, and that is occupying most of my mind rather than kind of other goals. I want to, of course, just get more knowledgeable in different fields, especially the course that I've now started. So I have some kind of personal ambitions, but I never really want to share it too much publicly, because I don't want to do any kind of mental masturbation of like, yeah, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and I'm never going to do it. But I always say it out loudly just to make me feel better. So I want to the other way around, that I do my thing and then I prove it with work.
Yeah. Kind of doing the background type of deal.
Yeah. What about yourself?
I can appreciate that. Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to read a book every month and like whatever it is, these sort of, and the thing is with those, I don't know, you have issues even with like, when you set those sort of tasks, it's just like you just make sure you read it and you focused on reading it rather than getting what you need from the book for itself. But yeah, the only one that just sprung to mind that I've decided I'm doing this year is when I take Ada out for her kind of middle of the day walk, which is like 45 minutes. I'm going to be on my phone only as necessary. Like if I leave you a voice note, don't just fucking scroll through Instagram. I can listen to a podcast, but I want to be present in that walk with Ada because I'm really bad for it. Any opportunity where I feel like time is being wasted, I need to be doing something that I think is valuable. Like I think, so social media, I can comment on some things, I can like some stuff, I can maybe do a story, answer some questions. I'm just like, but did you need to do that now? Or would it have benefited you to have this break and kind of enjoy having a dog? And she only gets to go outside not once a day, but for this longer walk once a day, it's also good for her. So yeah, that was just one thing where I'm like, I guess it's me being a bit more mindful in the moment and present and trying to use that as a bit of a de-stressor, because I can stress myself out and I'm not even getting anything done.
That's a very good point, Steve. And I have to admit, I'm the same way as well. And this, of course, causes a lot of anxiety because it kind of accumulates. After a while, you can't ever relax because you always have the feeling that you're wasting that time. And sometimes you're so tired that you're then sitting in front of maybe the computer for like hours and you don't get anything done. And it would have been much, much better to just step away and relax, come back in a more renewed and refreshed manner. And yeah, once again, I feel you, and I'm basically the same, and it causes a lot of anxiety for me. And also at the same time, I'm reflective enough on it, then I would love to be able to just like have a day where I'm just like sitting on the couch maybe and not thinking about, I need to do something.
It's hard. And you're right in that it creates anxiety because it's a sense of I feel like I have to be productive every day. I have to have done something productive. And then when I try and relax, even watching something like anime, I'm like, that was 20 minutes I could have spent reading a book. It's like, yeah, but would you have digested the book? Would you have taken it in? You're not relaxing when you're trying to like, and I'm not going to read a fictional book. They're always going to be like the ones I've got here, which are like PT books or like strength and conditioning books, that sort of shit, or like even habit books, that sort of thing. So yeah, it's a tough one to try and crack. And sometimes I think it's forced. So sometimes you have to force yourself. So I might even, if I can't do it on the walk with Ada, I could just leave my phone at home if I have to. And then I'm like, okay, I've done that before. I don't know if you've done it before, Pascal, where you go out for a walk, you leave your phone and you're just like, oh shit, you go to get it. You're like, oh, I haven't got it.
Oh yeah.
Do I need it? No, but what am I going to do?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Also this has, of course, its pros and its cons. I never really want to just like brush it off and be like, this is inherently bad because especially I think that when I remember back when I was employed, I had a much easier time relaxing, right? Especially on the weekends and also at the end of the day. And I think it first started when I was self-employed, when I had the feeling that I always need to do something because there's always something that you can improve. There's always some work to be done. And I don't know whether it also has to do with you feeling that you still haven't really achieved the things that you want to achieve. And I think that once you are at a point where you feel that way, I don't know whether you would then relax or whether this is more than a habit of yours that you need to start the next project and next project. So yeah, once again, I don't know. Sometimes I just wish to be more like back to an employed kind of state. It's like, all right, on the weekend, I know that I can just like, if I want to just spend a day on the couch, I could. I would probably never do this anymore, but now I would feel guilty. I would feel anxious that I'm once again wasting my time. And I know how ridiculous this sounds, but yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm the same. It was becoming self-employed. When I was employed, literally off work, didn't think about it. I think those lines are even being blurred now, though, for some people at least. I know they're blurred for Charlotte because she is contactable. Like she's got apps on her phone that are just like work-related apps, and they're communicating on their. Like there's not an evening that goes by that she's not looking at this thing that's notifying her that work's going on.
Of course, it always depends. It doesn't mean like self-employed like this, employee like this. Of course,
no, of course.
If you're running an entire section or so, right, then of course you need to probably manage a lot of things. But I think that there are stricter rules there. At least something like VW, the car manufacturer, has it. I at least heard it at some point that they have like the servers are turning down over the weekend so that you can't really send emails over the weekend anymore. And hence that you're then not checking your phones. I think it's just more due to kind of pressure as well, especially for those bigger companies.
Yeah. I think some of the, I don't know, you hear it from like something like Apple or Meta, Facebook, whatever. They seem to be a bit more forward thinking about like mental health and well-being, that sort of thing. But yeah, that's the only one I really have. But I wanted to say before we got on this call, I know last time, I think it was last time, you said that we would talk about my plan, like longer term plan. Oh yeah. So I wanted to make sure that I'd thought about it. Fuck that. Let's not talk about it.
That was me last week. That was last year, Steve. Now it's 2023. We're talking about me, of course. Yeah. No, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt you right there.
No, it's all right. So, yeah, oh man, I know I spoke to you yesterday via a voice note saying how my eyesight was a bit blurred and I wasn't feeling the best post kind of leg training, and that has carried over to today. It was probably the first time that it's taken me over an hour to eat my breakfast, which is, it's not fun. You like kind of put it there, you eat a few mouthfuls, I'm like, oh, put it back. And I'm like, I got to finish this. Like I'm laboring this, but yeah, it's not fun. I'm hoping it's just related to, I don't know, like the last few weeks have maybe been a bit out of routine, a bit stressful. But I mean, you know me, Pascal, I've not been doing anything silly. Like my stress isn't like wild because I've been having loads of caffeine or like whatever, or like not having my sleep and things like this. So it's a bit strange. And I'm finding and I mentioned this to you, my systemic kind of fatigue within training is just like, I'm getting good training sessions in, but man, I feel like I hit a wall within sessions sooner than I necessarily should. And maybe locally I could fatigue a muscle group more, but systemically I'm just like, oof. And it's not even like I'm doing particularly high volume. Like for today, for back was 6 sets. 2 of those sets were a lat prayer. 2 sets were a bent over row. 2 sets were a machine row. It's like 6 sets of back. It's nothing crazy, but I was like, oh, I'm gassed. Like what is not like cardiovascularly gassed, but like just physically just like, oh. And the session overall, I did some delts, calves. It took me like an hour fully. Like it's not a crazy workout or anything. I'm not doing anything silly. So I'm going to just see how the next few days go. I don't know if I have to, like last time, just pull the plug on the mass a little bit earlier than I'd like to. I really don't want to do that. So yeah, like short term, I have planned a mini cut starting at the end of this mesocycle anyway. I'm in week 3. So I'm hoping I'm going to really prioritize sleep, like all the kind of variables, and just nail them down as best as possible and hope it kind of passes. Sometimes these things happen. So then I do have planned a mini cut. And the good news is, it's so frustrating. I wanted to hit a new peak body weight. That's kind of my goal each time before I hit a mini cut. Last time I peaked at an average of 194.6. So you could say 195. This time I'm averaging this week at 195.6. So I'm at 196 maybe. So I'm a pound up. So maybe I'll finish at 1 or 2 pounds heavier than last time. Like you said, yeah, it's progress, I guess. Kind of frustrating that it's there. But I've been gaining, since that mini cut, it's been 20 weeks, half a pound a week on average. Therefore, that kind of weight gain is. So I'll do that mini cut. And then I had planned to mass to like an all-time peak high body weight, hopefully. Maybe get a couple of pounds above where I am now, or we'll finish this mass. So I would like to touch 200 pounds, just, it's kind of arbitrary, but it seems reasonable in terms of a weight to achieve. I'm not sure I will. My body just doesn't seem to want to do that. And I don't want to grind through days of feeling like this, where I'm really having to force feed. And I don't, like, my training seems to be impacted negatively in terms of just being able to like get a decent amount of volume done and getting good quality workouts in. So anyway, hopefully I get to near 200 pounds. Then I've planned a 10-week cut, because I told you I was thinking about a 10-week cut this time. And then I was like, actually, if I do a 10-week cut now, I'm getting too light, too lean earlier within my off season to compete 2024 than I need to. So like, do 1 more mini cut, mass, then a 10-week cut, short mass, mini cut, short mass, prep. That's kind of the goal. Yeah. And so I should start prep around 190 pounds, which is like 20 pounds above my all-time low weigh-in. And so I'll have like maybe 15 to 20 pounds to take off, I think, from that kind of starting point near 190 pounds. So yeah, I just like mapped it all out before we jumped on, because I was like, I want to have some idea. Yeah. And then I was as I was mapping out, I was like, I can't just arbitrarily put in a 10-week cut here, because it actually doesn't make sense for the like best long-term periodization. Yeah. So yeah, it's like my off season to now has kind of been like pushing up, mini cuts down, pushing up, hitting new highs. But like the second half of my off season leading into prep is going to kind of be like the mini cuts and cuts are taking me downwards, and then I'm massing up a little bit, but I'm hitting new, like my overall trajectory is down towards stage. So yeah, I'm guessing you'll probably have something similar in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, I just want to take a quick break for our sponsors. That is us talking about our coaching services. So we will be back in just a couple of seconds.
Do you not see the progress you would like? Are you sick of writing your own programs? Or perhaps you need some accountability in order to stick with a plan? Then it's time to start working with us. We at Revive Stronger offer a truly personalized coaching service. You'll get more than just an email with some macros or random cookie cutter program. With Revive Stronger, you will be the center of our attention. You will receive your own fully individualized training protocol alongside a customized nutritional strategy. We create the coaching around your needs, wants, personal preferences, and your own unique lifestyle. Every single week, we delve into your program in order to make appropriate adjustments so that we get the most out of your time and the best possible outcome. We help both female and male athletes to seriously change their body composition by adding more muscle mass and decreasing fat tissue. No matter if you're a competitive bodybuilder or just want to look better, if you need help with your progress and taking your physique to the next level, our coaching is for you. It's time to make a change. Sign up today and let's revive stronger.
So one thing that I want to touch on first, right? That has to do, of course, with the mapping out of things and also the fatigue that you're experiencing right now. What would you attribute it to, why you're feeling that way at the moment? Is it just the accumulation of fatigue over such a long time frame? Is it because you've never really taken a break, never really taking something like... So you had one active rest period, didn't you? Where it was like an entire week without training and so?
So yeah, I took when I got one of my tattoos, I took an active rest and then a week off. So like 2 weeks of like barely anything, basically. That was in May last year. So you brought up a good item, because there is an active rest within what I spoke about there, but I'm considering dropping in another one sooner rather than later, depending on how I feel, because it's like you said, the things I'm feeling now kind of feel a bit wrong, and maybe it's due to not having taken an extended period of time off and only having taken one lower volume like active rest last year. Like one isn't that much.
No, it isn't. It would make a lot of sense, in my opinion, to take kind of one active rest week or so. I'm a big proponent of something like 2 to 3 active rest periods throughout the year. Especially when you're not doing something like a primer phase. If you're doing a primer phase, I could see you getting away with maybe just one active rest period throughout the year, even though that a primer phase is still a hard training session or a hard training mesocycle. I always find it funny when people are then going into a primer phase for the first time, when I'm prescribing it and planning it for them. They're going in there and then they are reporting back like, holy shit, it was hard, I'm feeling sore and all that kind of stuff, even though that the volume and the repetition ranges are so much lower in general, and yet they are still responding in that way. So it is, of course, still quite systemically fatiguing overall, but the workload to what it is that you're normally doing in a hypertrophy block is just significantly lower. And because of that, you can somewhat recover over that time frame. And in my opinion, it would just make a lot of sense before you're going into that next block to take just a couple of, it doesn't even need to be an entire week of active rest, but just to give the body a little bit of a break, because you're pushing it always to the limit, right? And then pulling back to let those adaptations also take place and also allow the body to kind of resensitize and refresh itself so that you're then capable of pushing even further.
Yeah, so yeah, it's really good points. And I agree, the primer phase, I've ran active rests and primer phases with clients I've had for extended periods of time, and I've consistently had it where they've said the primer phase resensitizes them more than an active rest does, which is kind of what you're saying there, where if you're doing a primer phase, you won't need as many active rests. It makes sense, it's more time at lower volume. So I actually had considered, it's been a thought kind of floating through my mind of doing a kind of primer phase, but still in the kind of hypertrophy rep range, but very low volume and very high intensity. But I think it would kind of defeat the purpose of the primer phase. But I was just like, maybe I'll train like people have asked if I've ever done it with a top set and just back off set and like very low volume, very high intensity. I was like, oh, maybe I'll do it. Anyway, that was a different topic. It's just a thought that was floating through my mind. But yeah, I had been thinking at the end of this mass, it might be a good idea to take an active recovery and then a kind of intro week, very easy, light, and then start the mini cut after that. But I hadn't really thought about just doing like half a week. Actually, half a week might be like a decent option too at this period of time.
The way that I'm doing now deloads with nearly all of my athletes, and it turned out to be very well received, is, so there are of course many different ways on how you can do a deload. I want to be very clear that this is not the way that I would say that everyone needs to take a deload in, but I found it to be very much, once again, well received and also working very well from a recovery perspective. Is that normally in the past, I was having or was reducing the frequency already. But this time I'm only doing 2 sessions now in the entire deload. So what I end up doing is I want the people to have like 1 upper body day and 1 lower body day. Or if you want to split it up, you could also do something like a quads and a push and a pull and a hams day. All right. This way you're giving the upper body and the lower body still something, but you are allowing for enough time around it to really recover without losing any kind of adaptations if you place those 2 workouts in the middle of the deload. This allows you then at the first half of the deload to have plenty of rest days coming out of the most intense training week. And then afterwards, right, where you're inducing some kind of blood flow and adaptations then in the middle of the deload. And then you have another 3 to 4 days of complete rest again, and then you're going for then the next mesocycle. And that has turned out to work very, very well with the vast majority of people. Not only is it a highly reduced frequency for the vast majority of people, which is well received because it's just nice sometimes to be out of the gym for some people. And also it gives the body the rest that it needs. Because what I found is if you are training 6 days per week and you reduce it to 4 days a week, yes, it is still a significant reduction. But sometimes I found that this wasn't even enough, because if you had your last training session, maybe on a Saturday, and then you go into the deload week and you start training again on a Monday or Tuesday, take some very light sessions. This leads then all the way to Friday. And on Monday, you're starting the next mesocycle again. You still had too many exposures to then a stress level once again. And once again, for me personally, what I found with the vast majority of my athletes, and also myself included, this is the best combination of I'm still going in there, so I'm not completely avoiding the gym, which sometimes from a psychological perspective is hard for people. But at the same time, I have plenty of rest days to really make sure that I'm resting up, healing up, and recovering, because sometimes a higher frequency than this is still too much for some people to recover from.
Yeah, I think my thoughts are that higher frequency, if the volume's equated to the lower frequency, it probably isn't all that much. And then you'll get the clients reporting how their sessions are taking them like 10, 15 minutes. And then I'm like, well, you can combine your sessions. Yeah. You don't have to like make the effort to go to the gym and everything.
But just to play devil's advocate here, Steve, not only there are things in life that you may not perceive as stressful, but is still a stressor for then you and your body, whether you perceive it as such or not. Right. So, for example, you are going to the gym, getting a little bit up earlier in the morning, for example, to make it happen to go into the gym. You are still there and lifting some weights, whether it is stress that you perceive as such or not. It's still a stressor, probably, right? Because or if you compare it to what you're normally doing, and now you are exposing yourself to that amount of stress, you may not even notice it. Right? It's kind of like, I don't know, the karate fighter who's always hitting his knuckles against the wall. At first, of course, each and every single hit is painful. After years of doing that, right, it doesn't really hurt at all with the first kind of hits, but it's still probably stressing then the skin and the knuckles and all that kind of stuff. And that's why I think that even if volume is equated, I would say, and just from evidence around, for example, 2 times of frequency for training sessions, it's still a higher exposure of stress than if you only go 2 times. Right? Because if you do something like 2 times a week, 2 times a day of training, and we both know it, even if it's the same frequency, 2 times a day is way more stressful than once per day, even if volume is equated.
I don't know how I feel. So from my experience, I don't know if 2 times a day, I think psychologically it can be more stressful. It depends on the setup. I think, like you said, if you are, like for a lot of people, there's a commute involved to the gym as well. If they are having to potentially sacrifice a little bit of sleep, sacrificing a bit of downtime that they could be kind of de-stressing, then I can definitely see that kind of reducing the training frequency to that extent is going to be a big help to them. And then also something you kind of touched on there is part of the benefit of training twice a day could be that the quality is higher in that second session. And so you're able to train yourself harder than you otherwise would. So by having a higher frequency, but spreading it out over more days, you could be keeping that stressor higher than if you were doing that tag to the end of that session. But yeah, I think ultimately you just need to you should be leaving the gym feeling better after that kind of light, just blood flow kind of movements. And if you're coming out of it and you can't, sometimes people just really struggle mentally to hold back, and you might be doing junk volume at that point. You might actually not be able to like perform well, and you might be thinking you're deloading, but you're actually performing at such a like exertion level that, yeah, if it's feeling hard during those sessions, it's probably not, like you said, it's probably stressful. And I can say sometimes I maybe have got into that territory where I've struggled to pull back as much as I should, but I can't train hard. So I think it's easy training, but it's still stressful training. But I can definitely see like having more rest days back to back, even from anecdote, I've seen that tends to benefit people nicely in terms of they just get extra recovery versus just spreading it out and going through it. And like you said, there's many ways to deload. Ultimately, it has to be recovery based, not stressed inducing. And if a deload is going to be successful versus just taking complete time off, it needs to be an amount that's just recovery inducing, not kind of overloading in that sense.
Absolutely. And what I always like to say to those individuals, if you can't hold back, right, then don't go to do the training session at all. Because you don't really get any kind of benefit from then going in there and still training. No. Because the deload has one purpose and one purpose only. And that is to really make you recover. And if that then means to not go to the gym at all, so be it. Because you want to actually set yourself up. You can't just always constantly push yourself. And those people who say that they can, either they are the exception, which is very hard to believe, to be honest, or they maybe take a couple of more rest days throughout the mesocycle that then allows them. It's kind of like also there, that is the more a dose-dependent thing of like whether you are now pushing for 5 weeks and then take a deload, or you're spreading the rest days or what is it called, titrating the rest days throughout then the mesocycle, and by that extending it so that the deload is in between those sessions. Well, it could also be a feasible option, but at some point I have a very hard time believing that you can give it all your all the time without running into a wall. And once again, there are always, of course, the exceptions for that. We know this from professional sports as well. Some people are able to pull things off that you don't really think can be pulled off, but they are then the professionals for a specific reason. And if you then have something like a family at home, a full-time job as well, and all that kind of stuff, probably pretty hard to pull off still.
Actually, that's a point you mentioned in terms of, I don't know if you've had this with clients, but because of the holiday period, they weren't working, and that led to them having a bit more time, and so they could either prioritize sleep more or whatever, it allowed more time for sleep, or they're at least sleeping probably in more than they normally would be. And just had a number of clients reporting that they're sleeping more and feeling better, and that they're like, I feel really good. And I was just like, man, even all of them emphasize sleep all the time, but even people who have a big focus on it can probably do with more sleep. And I know there's been like sleep extension studies done on like basketball players, and they're like free throwing improves by like significant percentages. And it's just like, oh man, almost always you can do with more sleep as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, once again, I don't want to come across as someone who says like, okay, you can't train, for example, 7 days out of the week. If you feel that this is something that you can recover from, be my guest. Also, when it comes then to taking deloads, for example, it's about figuring out what really works for you. And it's always easier said than done. And never does anyone really gives you any kind of instructions on how to go about it. I always find this unfair as well, because it's an intellectually lazy kind of argument or kind of recommendation to put out there of like, you do you, and you figure out what works for you. How? I mean, it took me years to just like get remotely to what works for me. And even then, there are probably so many things that I haven't even tried yet that I'm not even taking into consideration, or maybe can't even do. And because of that, I will probably never get to, or whatever works for you, you know?
Yeah, it's very interesting, because I have this thought sometimes with, it's normally with training, but you could apply it to nutrition, that there are small things that you could trial, but because at this state in our career, to see a result would take so long, you have to invest a hell of a lot of time into it to be able to see the outcome. And then there's so many variables at play. So you almost have to just be like, is this principle based? Does it feel right in the moment? Okay, I'm going to run with that for an extended period of time.
Totally.
And kind of set it in the oven and hope it cooks well.
Yeah, totally.
Don't
and
check
that's
it too
the
often.
thing, I think, with training in general. And that's why I also think that you shouldn't really jump around too often. Because yes, you could, of course, find what really works well for you. But if you have, like, I don't know, this is just a chance of probabilities, for example. If you have like 10, or you have like a chest field, right? And one field is the perfect field for you. What's the likelihood that you're actually just hitting it from the get-go? It's very unlikely, right? If you're just like trying to jump on the chest field like blindly, right? And even if you're then stepping on another one, right? From a probabilistic term, it is still very unlikely that you're hitting it, right? But it could be that on that position, you're already very well set up. And if you just stay there, that you're in a good position to just like move along. And then you learn your environment where you are at that time, instead of just like walking around and see, oh, did that work? Oh no, let me just go over here. Oh, didn't work either. And sometimes we are not even giving it enough time to be good at a skill. And I think that this really is the most important thing of becoming good at a skill. We all know this. If you want to be better at playing the guitar, yes, you could learn or play the piano. There is a little bit of a music understanding behind it as well, the coordination between the fingers, and also just like listening to music and all that kind of stuff. But if you had spent the same amount of time playing the piano in order to play better the guitar, you could have spent the same time with just playing the guitar, and you're probably much, much better now in playing the guitar.
Yeah, it's that typical change the exercises too frequently and then just always relearning them. And it's like, you get lots of progress, but you're just relearning it. And that never feels great. It's actually when it gets hard to progress it, that's like, okay, now you're really in the like, hard, you're still progressing it though. Yeah. So if you're still progressing it, keep moving forward with the needle there. Trying to think, is there anything else that we wanted to cut? How about you? You were thinking about mini cut, but you're deciding to continue pushing on to mass.
Yeah.
Is it kind of a go by feel type of thing in that sense?
Yeah, I think I will continue pushing, and then probably somewhere around 82 kilograms or so is probably then the cutoff point for me, where I would assume I won't really look comfortable or good and comfortable with my look anymore. But this is also something, of course, that I will take as it comes. I mean, the limit will definitely be 85 kilograms, because in the last times that I've went all the way up to 85 kilograms, I didn't look good, I didn't feel good, and all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, for now, right now, mini cut is probably not in the cards. Not in the cards in the sense of like psychologically or psychological demand or anything like this, but more so because I don't really think that from a physiological perspective I need it.
Yeah. What weight are you above stage weight at the moment?
I would always take this with a little bit of grain of salt, right? Whenever I'm talking about above stage weight, is probably not the same as when you are saying you're above stage weight, because my stage weight was at 72.3. That was my lowest weight that I had. And now I'm at around 78.7. So it doesn't really sound like a lot, but I also know that I had another 2 to 3 kilograms that I could have possibly and probably have lost in order to get to that stage conditioning that you probably had, in the sense of like the peak conditioning for the last couple of shows. And that's why if you then take this as a baseline, it creates already kind of a different picture of how far I'm away from then kind of peak stage weight probably.
Yeah. I think if you take that extra kind of, mate, did you have a couple of kilos to come off? I don't know if you had quite that much. I don't know.
Maybe not 3 kilos, but
change.
I think that I still had like 2 kilograms, especially around kind of love handles. Hamstrings were still a little bit more to go. Around the quads still. Of course, in certain situations, certain lightings, there were featherings on the quads, but I still think that there was easily another 2 kilograms or so. I'm quite convinced of that,
and I think, to be honest. Okay. If you take that into consideration, then we're not too dissimilar in terms of weight above stage now, I don't think. Like it's 20 odd pounds above stage weight.
It always sounds a little bit different when you're then calculating things in kilograms. Because the discrepancy isn't really that high. But if you then calculate it into pounds, it actually comes very, very close to another.
But yeah, you're close to 10 pounds above, 10 kilos, above stage weight. So like that would be similar to myself.
Yeah, especially when I'm now pushing up to 82 kilograms or so, then I would definitely say like, all right, this is 10 to 11 kilograms from my, what I would say like kind of peak stage weight, more so 11 kilograms. So yeah, and if you really then calculate it, it's kind of 23, 24 pounds.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And again, it makes sense. Like, it would depend on how you were looking. Like, there's a few, if people are thinking about when to mini cut, obviously it's kind of in one regard, it's how you're looking. And I mean, as a competitor, if we're just taking it how you're looking, it's like, well, when do you need to look a certain way for stage? You have to take that into consideration. Then secondarily, for people that doesn't matter for, it's like personal preferences, or are you getting above like, I don't know, 20% body fat as like you're just soft all over basically if you're 20% and plus, and are you potentially putting yourself in a worse position in terms of like insulin sensitivity and well-being and producing new body fat cells? I don't know, those sort of variables. Appetite being one, that seems to only limit a few of us, but does limit some of us. And then really they're the only ones, like performance, well-being, that sort of thing, as another one where you might just decide, right, my weight and my body fat is limiting my ability to perform. Otherwise, like you can just keep kind of pushing up. So if for you were still feeling good, performing well, appetite was still good, and you didn't have like, you had no idea when you next were to compete, you could decide, right, I'm actually just going to keep moving this forward. But now that it's 2023, and if we want to compete 2024, already you have to start thinking a little bit about that, and you can't push too far what is considered.
Time flies by so quickly. And once again, as we've already discussed, also I want to look decent enough for then the wedding. That doesn't mean that I need to look like a skeleton or so, but I want to just look good, right? Probably the look that I would aim for if I were to, this is such a wrong terminology, retire, where it's like, all right, I just want to maintain here. This looks good. This makes me comfortable. At the same time, I look like someone who lifts, but it's also sustainable for me. Something like this, Yeah.
No, I know exactly that look. Looking like a swimmer, a fit swimmer.
Is that so?
Did you see my story?
I saw that, yeah.
Did you see?
But isn't it just like because of the positioning rather?
I don't even know.
Standing in line.
Oh, it was hilarious. For those who didn't see it, someone commented on one of my reels saying, natural bodybuilders just look like fit swimmers. I think it was because it looks like we're wearing Speedos, and he is
in line, waiting on the sideline, isn't it?
And skinny with hardly any muscle, apparently, as well.
Could very well be, yeah.
There are some jacked swimmers, though, but not many. But there are some jacked swimmers.
I don't know. I'm not following swimming that much. Never really wasn't my sport, to be honest.
Someone just sent me a swimmer, and I was like, fuck, this guy is bigger than me. I swear, like, he's got like huge rounded delts. I was like, fuck this guy. And the person commenting certainly wasn't referring to this one specific individual who I think is called Ben something. Anyway, yeah.
Ben Swim. Ben Pool.
Ben Swim.
Something like
Michael
that.
Phelps, actually, big dude, and he isn't like a skinny rake either. Like, he has some meat on his bones.
Once again, I have no idea. The only thing that I can imagine about swimmers, like good swimmers, is that they have broad shoulders, tiny waists. Right? That's the only thing. And like, all right, Just put on a little bit of muscle, get lean, and you're a great men's physique athlete.
Yeah, true. Anyway. So, actually, we're talking about mini cuts, and it's a good time to remind people if they are thinking about mini cut and they're unsure how to get the most from the mini cut, we still have our group coaching service for the mini cut movement. Lots of educational resources there too, a group, programs for any split, males, females, specific to you. So if you are interested in doing a mini cut sometime in the future, definitely check that resource out. That'll be in the description box or something like that. We don't do a good enough job of selling that one, and it's very good.
And also the I don't want to call it commercial, but the ad will be playing here after this episode. So if you want to check it out, just watch that ad, and it gives you already a little bit of an understanding of what the mini cut is all about, what you can expect, etc., etc.
Very, very cool. Pascal, did you get any great Christmas gifts? We haven't talked about. Did you get any gifts for Christmas?
No.
Cole.
No, I did from my mom-in-law and my dad-in-law, and it was a great Christmas gift. Honestly, it was a wallet, like for all of the credit cards and all that kind of stuff, you know. And it was so funny because I was like convinced that Katie had actually a discussion with them, because 2 weeks prior to Christmas, my old one was actually breaking apart. This was still one that Katie did for me. So very much not a professionally looking one, but it did its job, right? I'm a pragmatic guy when it comes to those things. And I was actually looking right before Christmas on Amazon for kind of, what is it called? It's kind of where you can flip the cards out. It's pretty cool. You have kind of a button that you're pressing, and then the cards flip out. It's way better sorted. It's also not taking that much space in your pockets and all that kind of stuff. So I was just like, should I get one? Nah, it's too expensive. Even though that wasn't that expensive, it's like $30 or so. But I'm just like, do I really need it? No, Katie's is still doing its job. I will just carry it until the end. And then they got me one. And I was convinced that Katie actually talked with them, and they didn't. It was just, they saw it on a market, thought like, hey, this is something that Pascal would fancy. Nice. It was like, that was perfect timing. Thank you very much. And the other one was not really a Christmas gift and kind of a Christmas gift. So Katie got me a calendar, like a Christmas calendar that was espresso beans. So each and every door had like, I think, what was it? 25 grams of different espresso. And this way I can just test out different flavors of espresso. The fucked up thing is, though, that normally you need to fine adjust your mill and also then the coffee machine for those beans. So if you don't do that, then you can't ever get the most out of the coffee beans. But with that amount of coffee beans, you don't have enough time to fine adjust it each and every single time. But once again, I'm deviating here, just rambling. It was good. Those were the two things that I got. What about yourself?
The nuances of being a barista. I'm sure some people will be, or just a coffee connoisseur. Some people will be able to relate.
Those other people are rightly pointing out, just a fucking hipster, and that's totally all right.
Yeah. Those calendars are really cool. I know I had the Lego Star Wars Mandalorian one last year, but didn't have one this year. Because it was a novelty. I didn't use the Lego pieces. I was like, I'll put them out somewhere. And I was like, no, they're just in a fucking Tupperware somewhere. Like, I haven't used them. I have no children who would find them interesting either. So I don't know why this gift comes to mind. I got a nose trimmer. This tells you my age. Yeah.
Yeah,
Charlotte didn't want to get me one.
Or the growth of your hairs of your nostrils.
Well, yeah.
Right? One of the two things. It's either age-related or how disgusting the hairs pop out.
I'd been saying to
maybe
Charlotte...
both at the same time.
I was saying to Charlotte I was frustrated having to I was just pulling them out like this.
Steve.
They're very long sometimes.
Yeah, I know this, but pulling them out, it hurts. Like,
so I was like, a nose trimmer would be helpful, so I got a nose trimmer.
I don't really find them...
remember what else.
I don't really find them effective, to be honest.
Oh.
I don't know why. Maybe my hairs in my nostrils, they're just like too flexible. I don't know. Too agile. and they are just like
Dodge
slipping out. Yeah, exactly. The entire time dodging it, because I have to do it a little bit differently. I need to do my normal razor, so not the wet razor, but the dry razor with an attachment on it, and then I need to actually point the nose up and get inside there to get all of the hairs. Yeah, it sounds awful, but this is the only way that I can do it.
I don't know why I'd only recently noticed it, but they were like just poking out my nose. I was like, man, I'm just gonna pull these fuckers out.
That's like, the good thing about having a mustache, because they are just blending in with the mustache.
Yeah. The mustache grows out the nose first. Yeah. It's just
exactly, and you can only see it when you're very, very close. Yeah. So on that note, on that disgusting note, we'll leave you with that. Hopefully, guys, you had a lovely start to 2023. Once again, as I already said at the end of last year, I just want to take a moment once again to say thank you very much for last year. And hopefully we can count on your support here for this year as well. For this, as always, leave a like, leave a subscribe, leave a comment in the comment section below. And thank you very much, guys. And once again, hopefully you have a lovely start to 2023. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Losing weight fast while maintaining muscle mass. Sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? It isn't though. It's reality, and we know how to do it, and we will help you achieve this. The Minicut Movement is an 8-week fat loss program to make you lose a huge chunk of fat while maintaining muscle mass at the same time. We will support you from the beginning to the end so that you see the results you would like to and come out of it much stronger. You'll receive a fully automated spreadsheet that is based on your nutritional needs. You can choose between 6 different male and female training templates. Over 30 videos will guide you through each and every single step of the Minicut so that you're getting the most out of your journey and that you always know what to do. But the best thing is that you can start whenever you want. The Minicut Movement is open 24/7. So if you want to learn more or you're ready to sign up, hit the link in the description below. So let's revive stronger together.